Welcome to a football show, Monday edition, and for the fourth consecutive week, non-victorious Monday edition of a football show. Brought to you, of course, by the Pharmacy and Kingston Group. Normally, we'd be at the Pharmacy celebrating or drowning our sorrows. Zach would be drinking beer, probably. I'd be trying to not drink beer, but that is Mike Herndon. Hi, Mike. How are you, buddy?
Hey, look at me. I'm not Zach.
That's not Zach. I don't know if Zach wants us to tell everybody what's happened, but he was in Memphis over the weekend having a big time. I think there might have been some issues, some dietary things that may have taken place, and we're not sure where he is. He might be somewhere between Jackson and Lexington, Tennessee, out there, in the middle of nowhere. We're not really sure, but not feeling great. So we thought we'd call in Mike Herndon here to hang out. And of course, I'm Braden Gall. Thanks for hanging out with us. Get into the comment section if you want to enjoy what we have to do today, which is discuss the fourth consecutive loss for the Tennessee Titans, the first ever four-game losing streak for Mike Vrabel in his time as the head coach for the Titans. Of course, their ninth consecutive loss to the Chargers on the road, which is just a random and bizarre stat and means really nothing to the game. We'll get into the quarterback situation. We'll talk about the coordinator stuff. We'll talk about the injuries. I think we've got a theory we'd like to maybe meander and work our way through about why this team is so injured all the time. Mike Vrabel talked a lot about the injuries, of course, was asked a lot about the injuries in Monday's press conference. Play calling as well, of course. We'll get to all of that. The greatest sporting event in maybe all of the calendar year took place on Sunday, and no, it was not the Chargers and Titans, so we'll get to that a little bit later on as well. So, Mike, good to have you, man. First of all, tell everybody where they can find all your work, all the great shows you do, all the scribings, all the workings. You're very well listened to and very well read and very popular.
Yeah, so I will be talking and writing a lot about this godforsaken football team this week. So F Words Pod will be out on it usually comes out Tuesday evening or Wednesday morning, and then we'll have that same time frame. My writing at paulkowarski.com comes out usually goes up Tuesday evening or Wednesday morning, and then on Thursday, if you've not had enough of me at that point, the Mike Herndon show with Easton Freeze. We do some tape breakdown. We talk a little bit about, we mull over the dead body a little bit more, and then we will move on to previewing, a couple dead bodies playing against each other next weekend.
Yeah. Well, hey, actually, the other dead body might still be alive. It might still be twitching as the Houston Texans playing valiantly. Texans. Yes, they're playing valiant football right now, despite losing every single weekend. It's still, they're playing hard. 3 games left to go for both the Titans and, of course, the Jaguars, who come from behind. Speaking of zombie apocalypse, come from behind and somehow manage a victory over the Dallas Cowboys. The magic number is 3. That means they're probably going to end up playing for the division championship in the final weekend. It's not 100%, but it's possible. So we'll get to all the playoff machinations as well. D Good, of course, chiming in right away from the beginning. Blow everything up in the first minute of the show. Welcome to the show, D Good. Again, if you have any questions or comments, please jump into the notifications. Rate, review, subscribe to all the great shows that Mike just told you about, as well as all the other shows, of course, from the 440 Sports Network. The Preds are also, this is a great time to be a Nashville sports fan, by the way. Preds fans also, gold standard, It's All Your Fault. Listen to those 2 shows. Also wanting to blow it all up right now. There's no question about that. Club and Country just did a huge recap of the World Cup, so go check out that show. Fringe Element's going to be previewing your college football playoff games coming up this weekend, which is coming up next weekend. So we've got a lot of fun stuff planned for you guys. Happy holidays. Zach will be back on Thursday. And before we do any of that, however, call out here to our great sponsors, Pharmacy, right over there in East Nashville, McFerrin Avenue. Great burgers, great place to watch game, or great place to hang out and eat food and not get to watch games because they don't want you to have screens, which in this case on Sundays is probably a good thing. So you want a great beer that's locally sourced. You want a great burger. You want some tots. You want the best mustard I've ever seen in my life, ever tasted in my life. Go to the Pharmacy over there in East Nashville. Go check it out. They got a location downtown as well, but why would anyone want to go downtown? BuildKG.com is the website for the Kingston Group. That's the website there. Before you make any big decisions about your house, you're going to be, these things are very, very expensive. When you make big decisions about your house, when you want to add a wing, when you want to buy or sell a place, when you want to do a big renovation, they're very expensive right now. So make sure you have the best people on the job. That's BuildKG.com, the Kingston Group. Nashville's locally owned custom home and remodeling firm, award-winning. 2 locally owned companies sponsor this show. Broadway Sports Media, of course, Insider Account, 440 Sports, all local, all the time. So support local business, folks. We keep the community moving forward. All right. I've already got a couple of comments about the past and the future and all this stuff. They lose, and it's 4 straight in a row. and it's the first of the Mike Vrabel era. He answered some questions about attitude and teams quitting and personality, and I actually don't think any of that's really the issue, Mike. But when you I want to get your general thoughts. You walk away from that game. It ends with the defense playing extremely valiantly with all the injuries. No Danico Autry, David Long, Fulton, on and on and on. Offense has the same exact problems. Offense, Ryan Tannehill gets hurt on the first drive and is in the tent, gets carted back, comes back, plays incredibly tough football. Just what's the first thing that hits you? Like when you leave that moment and you leave that game and we try to come up with a new way to describe this team, what's the first thing that's on your mind when the game ends?
I mean, honestly, the first thing that came to my mind was that they have not quit, because this was a spot where I felt like they were going to get destroyed. Going to LA, the Chargers are finally healthy on offense for the most part. Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer, all their weapons were good to go. Kind of Justin Herbert looks like he's feeling like himself again after the rib issue earlier in the season. So to me, I felt like this was a spot where it's set up for them to be crushed. They were without all the 7 defensive starters, basically. If you looked at like first of the season projections, who would be in there for this game, 7 of your 11 starters on defense not in this game at all. And then they lost guys throughout the course of the game. And by the end of this game, they were down, from just a cornerback standpoint, 6 of their top 7 corners from what you would have expected headed into this year. It was just Roger McCreary, and then you had John Reed and Greg Mabin out there as your other corners. And they held the Chargers to 17 points on the road despite all that. So I felt like it was a team that did not give up. They fought. The defense held up their end of the bargain, and the offense came up short again, which is just like, those are the 2 things you can count on with the Titans this year: is there are going to be injuries and the offense is going to come up short. And it's odd because they're finding different ways to do it. Derrick Henry, the last couple weeks now, has been productive after going completely AWOL for a month of the season, basically. He has finally popped back up, and now they just, in this game, to me, it was third downs basically that did them in. They were terrible on third down throughout this game. And you have 0 wide receivers, Robert Woods and NWI and whoever else they were, Chris Conley. I think those guys combined for like 30 or 40 yards total in this game. So it's the same problems, just kind of it's like Mexican food, like it's all the same ingredients. It's just how it's packaged. It's the same problems. It's just how it's packaged with the Titans this year.
So it's funny. I wrote down, and Vrabel kind of alluded to this, that they lost in such a different way to the Jaguars than they did, especially at home, to the Chargers than on the road. Again, if you'd have told Titans fans they're going to have 3 sacks on defense with all the injuries, right? 7 starters. Again, same thing at middle linebacker. Like, I know Dylan Cole got back out onto the field, but like, how many middle linebackers are out of their top 4 or 5 middle linebackers? I think like 3 or 4 of them are injured. Yeah. If you'd have told me that this defense would have 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, Justin Herbert would be held without a touchdown pass for just the 3rd time in his entire career, I think that's almost 50 games, that Derrick Henry would be over 100 yards rushing, 163 yards from scrimmage, and this would be a 1-score game tied with less than a minute to go. And we're going to talk all kinds of shit about the offense. I get it. It's all the same stuff. The offensive line, the receiving corps, Todd Downing's play calling, Ryan Tannehill's injured. It's all the same stuff. But they delivered when it counted the most. I never had any faith in them being able to go down the field and score a touchdown to tie the game. And they did. And they did it really well to milk the clock and force the timeouts. And like, they did it actually pretty well from an execution standpoint. And they get in with 44 seconds to go. I thought go for 2 is the right call. It turned out it doesn't matter. I don't know if being down changes the way the Chargers run that final drive, or maybe the pressure's on the kicker maybe a little bit more and he misses the kick. Like, I don't know how you feel about that, but I do think going for 2 is the right decision. Vrabel said, hey, too much time on the clock. And I'm like, dude, you're either going to get a stop or you're not on the final drive. And so I don't know what you think. Like, I still think going for 2 is the right call, but I don't know how much that changes the final drive if they're up by 1 versus tied.
Yeah, and I kind of thought, from a psychology standpoint, that maybe that's what Vrabel was going for. He was thinking that maybe if we're tied, they're not going to press as much to get down the field and right. Try to get that field goal, and maybe we can get to overtime versus, if you get the 2-point conversion, obviously the Chargers are going all out to try to move down and get in field goal range. So I don't know. Maybe he thought it would take a little wind out of their sails offensively, but I thought, to me, in the moment, I was thinking, yes, go for 2. You've got Derrick Henry. I guess maybe the question is, well, we don't. Tannehill's immobile. So a lot of the stuff that you would want to do on a 2-point play at the goal line is based on quarterback mobility. At least what the Titans have done in the past, whether it be booting a quarterback out or running that zone read that they love on the goal line. Maybe that factored into it, but I would have liked to see them go for 2. But like you said, wouldn't have mattered either way.
Yeah. Josh says Titans should be grateful for past success, but understand that it's run its course and they need to look at a full-scale rebuild. They're either getting older at positions or just not good at it. Nick chimes in, of course, the roster when healthy is still pretty solid, especially this latest draft class, who is only going to improve. Problem is no one can ever stay on the field. So 2 things there. We are going to get to what the total rebuild, at least what the first step of the rebuild could look like today on the show, and sort of that decision-making process, which, again, obviously begins with the general manager, but that I'm going to kind of go one step further from that. And then we're going to have an injury conversation as to why this team is like this. This team, Vrabel said on Monday, he's changed the way this team practices since his first year, but that it's not all that different from last year and the year before. And so there's not really, again, Derrick Henry lands on Nate Davis's ankle. That's not something you can practice to get rid of. That just sort of happens. So we'll get to both of those conversations. D Good says he has nothing positive to say right now. Some guy named Zach Lyon says he's positive that this team stinks. I don't know who that guy is. And if you got any more questions, please chime in. But I want to get to obviously the dichotomy of the coordinators is on display in this game. The job that Shane Bowen and Mike Vrabel did to get this team prepared with all the injuries, as I said, to lay out those stats against Herbert and the Chargers. And then you come back and you see now it's like a weekly conversation. Like, all right, how real is the Todd Downing problem this week? And I don't really think that this week was particularly Todd Downing's fault. I do think the offense sucks as a whole because of John Robinson, Todd Downing, and injuries combined. So I think that there's a change coming, I would hope, a rational fan would think. The 3rd and 2 stuff, I know why people complain about that. I know why people say, look, why isn't Derrick Henry on the field for 3rd and 2? I thought the sack, when they could have had a field goal, again, it was tied at 7, and that took 3 points off the board. That was on Ryan Tannehill. Todd Downing actually called a brilliant play on 3rd and 9. Hassan Haskins is wide open in the flats on that. Tannehill has to get rid of the football on that play. I have a problem with not running the ball maybe on 1st down on the 25-yard line potentially. So how much of this is on Todd Downing? How much do you think fans sometimes occasionally misunderstand matchups and formations and game prep? And then, again, how much of this was purely just not having enough talent, not having enough ability, Ryan Tannehill getting hurt and clearly not having any ability to move around? Like, how much blame this week, Mike?
It's something like I've kind of wrestled with all season, because I agree. And I think we're all in agreement that Todd Downing has not done a great job as Titans offensive coordinator. And I think everyone would like to see this offense just go in a different direction after the season is over. No doubt about that. But I do think, if you look at the roster and you say, okay, you're able to bring in the best offensive coordinator in the league. Let's say Sean McVay, and you say, Sean, we want you to make this offense with Dennis Daly at left tackle, Aaron Brewer at left guard, a rookie at right tackle, and virtually 0 threatening receivers on the roster. And you have a very, very specific running back. Like Derrick Henry, while he is wildly talented, he needs an offense to be very specifically tailored to him. He is not like a guy that you could just plug into any offense and make work. So I don't think McVay would have any success here either. That is why I have struggled to just say Downing is the problem. As soon as you get rid of Downing, it's all going to be better, and it's all his fault. I don't think he's doing a good job. I also don't think he's given anywhere near enough pieces. And look at what the Rams offense looks like with just injuries to Cooper Kupp, injuries to their offensive line. It is terrible. Their offense has been terrible all year, and that's with a great offensive mind. So. And it happens. It's happened to Shanahan in the past. It's happened to all the great coordinators, with the exception of maybe Andy Reid, who somehow his teams always stay healthy, which maybe the Titans should look into why that is. We can talk about that here in a minute. But this is one of those things that I wrestle with it. In the 3rd and 2 stuff, I do agree. Like, as a third down back, I think Henry is generally lacking. Like, he doesn't give you, and Vrabel talked a little bit about this today, you want a guy who's able to separate on a choice route in that spot as your third down back. That is not Derrick Henry's game. He is not a guy that's going to come out of the backfield, break down a defender, and separate in a short area and be able to catch the ball. He's got very questionable hands. He is not a short area separator. He's not a great pass blocker either, for that matter. So I think all of those things point to him not needing to be on the field on third down. And also, as much as they use him, they've got to get him off the field at some point. So why not take him off the field on third downs to be able to give you, that's your chance to get your legs under you. But with the 3rd and short stuff specifically, I do think I would like to see Henry on 3rd and 2 in the game. Just because to me, especially towards midfield where you'd be inclined to go for it on 4th and short, like 4th and 1, 4th and inches, can you get one and put it in a go situation where you feel like you're going to convert, 60, 70% of the time? Because that's a better result than a lot of these pass lugs or whatever they end up running. I would like to see Henry and just run the ball on 3rd and 2, like make them stop you a couple times.
I love like what Philly's doing and what's with the new rules where you're allowed to have one guy pushing the quarterback, for example. Maybe not with, although they did it on the 4th and goal or the 3rd and goal to tie the game, actually, where Derrick Henry pushes Ryan Tannehill. I mean, the Wildcat has been pretty successful for this team with Derrick Henry when he has a chance to get like a 4 or 5 yard head start and you got extra blockers in there. The quarterback then is removed from the blocking scheme and you can add an extra blocker there, or using Tannehill as the quarterback sneak with Henry pushing. Like, there's lots of other creative ways where Henry actually becomes an asset, even if he's not being used. So I agree on 3rd and 2, you should be out there. What I don't think people truly grasp all the time, and I think blaming a coordinator for all your offensive issues is not some new phenomenon in football. It is like the oldest tradition as a football fan. It's always your offensive coordinator's fault. It is, if you're a college, pro, high school, it doesn't matter. XFL, it's the coordinator's fault. It's always the coordinator's fault. He didn't call the right plays. I don't think people truly, if they actually sat in meetings, and again, this is not a defense of Todd Downing because I think he should be fired at the end of the season. But I think if you sat in, when people get angry about one play and they look at this one, well, how could you run that one play? It's because they probably practiced that one play against a specific look the entire week. And when they get a 46 bear look with a corner blitz off the edge, like Cincinnati was doing, then maybe you run, maybe it's the out route to the receiver or something like and then they're throwing it on 3rd and 2. And if you get it, everyone's like, what a brilliant call. And if you don't, everyone's like, why the fuck didn't you run the ball? So I just think there's some element of this that, again, I'm not, Todd Downing needs to go. I got it. But like, I do think that yelling about a specific play call, I think is almost, it's like blaming the refs. I think it's very lazy fandom. It's not maybe understanding the full extent of football sometimes. It doesn't mean Derrick Henry shouldn't have been out there. I'm okay with that criticism, but it doesn't, like, throwing the ball on 3rd and 2 is not that crazy in the NFL in 2022,
No, it's definitely not. I mean, that would probably be more common. The only thing I think the Titans are a little bit different just because you should be able to run the ball with Henry. But I think you're right, though. Like, I think a lot of people just don't realize how complicated these NFL offenses really are. And that, a lot of people see, well, they just run it up the middle all the time. Well, there's like 19 different ways they can run it up the middle. They can run power, they can run draw, they can run inside zone, they can run duo, they can run wham. Like, there's a million different inside runs that all look different, all are designed to attack different things. And that is, it's a complicated thing to put together to begin with. And no, I don't think they're doing a great job of it. And particularly and this has been a complaint going all the way back to, Arthur Smith, the drop back passing game is just not up to snuff as far as I'm concerned with other NFL offenses. Like, you just don't see good enough route distribution. You don't see good enough spacing. Part of that is the receivers stink. And I think that's something that we have to come back to here, especially with Treylon Burks out. You have 0 receivers that can separate against man coverage. Not a single one of them. I mean, Chris Conley ain't doing it. Robert Woods ain't doing it. NWI ain't doing it. none of them are separating against man. So you have to be able to scheme them open all the time. And
I'm not sure Robert Woods has been open the entire year.
Oh no! Anytime he catches it, it's with a defender on his back, and that's not a strength of his game. Like if you get a team that runs zone coverage and lets him sit down in kind of the soft spots, he's great at that. He's really good. But it is not his game to separate against man. And that, why wouldn't teams want to run man against the Titans right now? Like they have nobody who can beat them. So until Treylon Burks gets back, that will continue to be an issue because he's the only one currently on the roster that can do that. And that's a major John Robinson issue.
Yes, we'll get to that. So a couple of people here have already mentioned this. Like AE says, do you think Vrabel was fired or they decided to mutually part ways? 0% chance in my opinion. D Good says, is it me or is Vrabel just going through the motions until Ohio State fires Ryan Day? And I don't like the part of the reason John Robinson isn't here, and this is kind of my last point on Todd Downing, is because they want Mike Vrabel to be in charge. Mike Vrabel, from what I understand and who I've talked to, is not, he enjoys like the human element of recruiting, but he doesn't enjoy the time commitment to recruiting. And frankly, I don't know who does other than maybe Nick Saban and Kirby Smart. Like it's 80% of your job description. I don't think that firing Mike Vrabel or he's interested in Ohio State, like I don't think either of those things are true. I think it's Mike Vrabel's job for the foreseeable future. Now, my question about the Todd Downing thing and relate it to John Robinson, it's all about, for me, wins above replacement. If you don't know baseball or you don't know analytics, it's about how good is the other guy that could come in and do the job, or in front office situation, maybe a woman. I think the bullseye above John Robinson is pretty small. Like I think he's pretty. Who would argue that Todd Downing is better at his job than John Robinson was at his? Right?
Nobody. Yeah.
John Robinson is clearly better at his job. Best GM in Titans history. Clearly better at his job than Todd Downing is at his. So if you're talking wins above replacement, John Robinson's way above Todd Downing. So to me, that means there's a larger bullseye that you can shoot for, a larger gap of potential improvement above Todd Downing than there is even for John Robinson. So if they're willing to make the move on John Robinson, it makes no sense at all to not shoot for something better than Todd Downing. So I think that's what's going to happen. I think the other side of this is what is going to happen with the quarterback position, because I'm watching this game and I'm watching the last 4 games. And first of all, my first thought was, what devil did Ryan Tannehill make a deal with in the summer of 2019? Because no one deserves to be treated this way. Like, I don't know if he made a deal with like some evil spirit to give him his best, most efficient 3 seasons of his career to make $100 million. I'd understand it. This is your payback. The bill has come due, and this Titans offensive line is what you get. Otherwise, nobody deserves this. And I just can't help but wonder, like, what is, if we're going to have people say blow it all up and we're going to have a new general manager and you got all the cap stuff that's with this team next year and this quarterback, with a rookie quarterback, it's hard to not mentally land on what is the first step of the offseason, and besides the GM, and the first step of the offseason is some semblance of a decision around Ryan Tannehill. And I don't know, like, now that the GM's changed, what are the options for the Titans around the quarterback, in your opinion?
Yeah, and I also think that decision will influence what the offensive coordinator decision is too, right? Because, you want a very different looking offense if you were going to try to make Malik Willis work versus what you would want if you were trying to bring back Ryan Tannehill and try to like reboot what you'd found in 2019, 2020. So I think it's probably the most important question. And to me, it's all going to come down to what ownership wants, right? Is ownership, when they go into these meetings with the GMs, because I'm imagining they're going to have several interviews. They're going to hear different pitches from, potential GM candidates as far as, what is your vision? What would you do if we gave you this job this offseason to get us back on the right track? And some of them are going to say, you need to get rid of Tannehill, clear your books, rebuild, see if Malik Willis is something, and then be ready to draft another quarterback in what looks like a really good quarterback class in 2024.
Drake May, baby. Drake May.
So I think that's what some guys are going to pitch, or ladies, of course. And I think others will say, look, you've got a good quarterback. You've got a top half of the league quarterback in Ryan Tannehill. I can come in and put some wide receivers around him. He needs a left tackle who can protect him. I'm going to rebuild this offensive line, get you some better weapons. And with the defense that you've already got in place, if we can figure out a way to keep them healthy, you could compete next year. So what sounds more appealing of those two options to Amy Adams Strunk? And only she can answer that, right? Because some owners will have, or some individuals will have more of a taste for a rebuild versus a reset, so it's going to be very interesting. But I think, if you cut Tannehill, you're saving, I think it's 18 million against the cap. If you traded him, it's the same thing.
It'll be exciting to watch him run the Falcons offense next year.
I will say this. I think a trade of Tannehill is very much in play. Like, I don't think they'll have to cut him. I think you could trade him and get real assets back. Because think about like teams like the Commanders or the Giants, both that we watched last night, or the Jets, teams that are not that far away at other spots, but need an upper half of the league quarterback to kind of go to, all right, we're in the playoffs and now we're going to see if we can win a couple games. Tannehill would be great on those teams.
I find it so interesting like this, because again, Mike Vrabel said, and, we've got fork in the road down there on the screen, and Vrabel used the phrase crossroads the day before John Robinson was fired, basically. And it does feel like everything will be informed by the quarterback, like the GM and then the quarterback, and everything else after that is informed by those two decisions. And it feels like, and we're just going to kind of quickly run through what could happen. Obviously, there's a contract restructuring coming if they want to keep him. If they're going to keep him, they're going to have to figure out a way to do something to the contract because the money just ain't right. I do think that trading him, I don't think you need to blow it all up because, as you mentioned, the defense is sound. The head coach ain't going anywhere. Like, you've got a lot of good stuff in place. The draft class last year is looking to develop. Chig Okonkwo, by the way, congratulations on breaking the rookie tight end receiving record for this team yesterday. He's clearly the most explosive weapon they have in the passing game, not named Treylon Burks. But when Burks and Phillips and Chig are on the field, like, there's some pieces there to work with.
Sure.
Replacing running backs is not as difficult as people think, even though Derrick Henry's on his path to a Hall of Fame career. It's more about, like, what do you want to be and who are you on offense? And moving on from Tannehill will not help you win games, but throwing Malik Willis out there and beginning the process to move towards a more modern NFL offense while also knowing you've got to go find the future guy, because maybe I don't know about you, but Willis has a lot of skill. He has got a ton of skill. I don't know if it ever clicks for him, but he's got elite abilities at a lot of different situations, and we know he likes to work hard. So maybe there's a chance there. To me, I'm almost like, just put Willis as your starter, start him, move on from Tannehill. If you can get assets for him, great. But if you want to modernize this offense, you got to start with moving on from Tannehill and the coordinator with the new general manager, and see what you have in Willis, and see what the offense looks like with some new concepts and some new pieces, knowing that if you suck, you get a good draft pick and you get a new quarterback, or it hits and the light bulb goes on and all of a sudden Malik Willis is your guy. Because again, it's not for lack of arm strength. It's not for lack of athletic ability. It's not for lack of strength and size. Like, he checks every box when it comes to all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Willis, to me, in this game, now we didn't see a lot of him. It was one drive that he was in.
Yeah.
I thought he looked more comfortable. I thought he looked more comfortable than he has. Like, obviously had the one weird play where it looked like Henry didn't realize he was supposed to go for a play fake. But he ends up making something happen out of that anyways. And to me, I honestly thought that might've been on Henry. Because it kind of looked like he had that oh crap moment when he realized he was supposed to go across the formation there. But either way, I think Malik Willis has shown some small steps over the course of the season as we've gotten these little glimpses of him. And it'll be interesting to see if we see any more of him over the next two games. I know Vrabel came out today and said he is not sitting Tannehill, even if, I guess say the Jags beat the Jets on Thursday night, it becomes a very, very narrow path to the Titans not having to win that Jacksonville game in Week 18 to win the division, which at that point, I think you could make an argument that, if Tannehill's iffy, you sit him and let Malik Willis play against the Texans again and see if he can go 2 for 2 against Houston. But, to me, like, that almost is the way that they need to go. I mean, you got to find out what that answer is. And
there's no other path. Like, there's not aside from just letting Willis go, letting Tannehill go, like cutting everybody, changing coordinators. Like, I don't know what that's what I keep thinking about. Is like, what other options do they really have? It's like, we're going to keep banging our head against this wall with Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, or we're going to begin the big first step of changing everything. And you've already got the guy. Now, what I'm fascinated by, and I don't know what you think about this, I am fascinated, and Zach says this, that Vrabel was very positive about Malik Willis during his press conference on Monday. Today, he was very, I don't want to say effusive, but he was very much like, the guy has learned a lot. He was far more prepared. He went in there. He's been running the scout team really, really well, commanding the huddle better, like said a lot of really positive things. Still has to read very intricate and complicated defensive schemes in a matter of seconds. that's still the job. Yeah. But I am fascinated because obviously John Robinson didn't love Willis either, because he wouldn't have passed on him 3 times if he did. I want to know so desperately how big the gap was in like how much Vrabel and how much Robinson liked Willis. Like, I want to know if I could get any question out of Mike Vrabel with truth serum and like a 30 minutes to talk to him. It would not be, how much did you and John Robinson disagree on scouting? Did you actually force him out? Blah, blah. I don't even care about that stuff. I want to know now about the future of this team. How much do you think Malik Willis can be a starting quarterback for your team? That is what I want to know, what he thinks. And I don't know what you think.
Here's the other question. And I'm still kind of in the same place with Willis that I always have been, as far as like, the tools are all there. I love his attitude. I love the fact that he seems like he is willing to put in the work to be really, really good. So I always think that formula gives you a chance, right? What I don't know is he ever going to be comfortable reading over the middle? Is he ever going to be to the point where he understands like what defenses are trying to do to him and can like really be like the puppet master of the offense? Because I think Tannehill does so much of that stuff really well, and that is why the offense has clicked, to a large degree with him under center. So you're going to lose some of that regardless of who you go to, right, next season. But Willis is interesting to me, but I wonder also if there's any thought about Jacksonville's really coming on right now. Trevor Lawrence looks like he has taken the next step and is going to be a guy for the Jaguars. It's going to be hard for the Titans to win the division next year because Jacksonville's going to be better. They already have, by the way, Calvin Ridley kind of stashed away.
Oh, yeah, forgot about that, right? I bet you all forgot about that.
Coming into that offense next year, in addition to, the weapons that they've already got.
A lot of very talented defensive pieces that are young.
Yeah. So they've got something that, to me, they are easily going to be the favorites to win this division next year. I mean, you could argue they're the favorites to win the division right now this year. But
that's insanity.
I wonder if the fact that you look around the division and you say, all right, can Tannehill and Henry, with a few modifications around them, do enough to beat out the Jaguars next year?
Can't believe we're saying that.
The answer is no. Maybe the time's now. Just rip the Band-Aid off, reset your cap, see what Willis is, learn, whether he's not is or isn't. And then you go into your, like you said, your Drake May, your Caleb Williams, your Quinn Ewers draft in 2024, and see what you can get if you can.
I'm curious. I'm curious. Like, this is not something I had thought about, but if they do lose the division and miss out on the playoffs, doesn't it make all that decision making a little bit more palatable from a PR standpoint? Yeah. Because if you get the dead cat bounce, which is what we say when your coach is already basically fired and he ends up winning a couple games and the fans rally and they like him now, and then they keep him and you keep the guy that you're not supposed to keep. Like, what happens if they win the division, they win a playoff game, and it's because Tannehill and Downing are brilliant, and all of a sudden, like, it's almost the worst thing that could happen is that be the thing. And then everyone's like, oh, I guess we got to keep Downing and Tannehill because they just won us a playoff game. That's almost like one of the worst possible things that can happen. Now, one of us on this show, I went back and listened to this. One of us on this show said Jacksonville was going to win 7 games, that Trevor Lawrence was going to show significant improvement, and that the offensive weapons around him had been improved significantly, and that just having a competent adult running the franchise instead of Urban Meyer would make all the difference in the world. The other person that disagreed with me on this show is not currently here to defend himself. So we'll get to that in the offseason. But as it turns out, worst possible time to play the Jacksonville Jaguars as they are rounding into form, understanding Doug Peterson's offense. Trevor Lawrence is healthy. The weapons around him are finding rhythm. And, of course, they do crazy shit in overtime, too. So it's the worst time to get this team. Now, again, if they lose to the Jets and you beat Houston and Dallas, it doesn't matter. You can clinch before the game in Week 18 in theory. Right. So we'll see about that. The playoff picture got really weird in the AFC, and I'm almost sort of thankful that the Titans don't get a ton of run because you had one of the weirdest weekends in the history of the game with the largest comeback in the history of football with Kirk Cousins. You got the dumbest play in the history of the sport, potentially, from the Patriots, which, again, greatest reality TV show of all time is football. And all these crazy and wild endings. You got the controversy with the Commanders game. Like, no one really paid attention to the Titans losing. And maybe potentially choking away the division. We'll see. I don't know. Just give me a quick, because Zach will be back on Thursday. We'll preview the game against Houston. Houston's been much better. They almost beat Kansas City, took them to overtime on Sunday. Jacksonville's playing better. Is this go into a winner take all in the final week? And what do you feel about the last 3 weeks of the season now that you've seen the last 4 weeks?
Yeah, I feel like that's where we're headed one way or another. Is that it's going to come down to Titans, Jaguars, and Jacksonville. And who knows? I mean, if the Titans were healthy, and that means like Ryan Tannehill isn't playing on one leg, Treylon Burks is out there. They have competent corner play because Christian Fulton is back, Amani Hooker's back. Guys like Denico Autry is back. Maybe David Long even is back. If they've got some guys back and are healthy, I think they could still win that game. I really do. I think the Jaguars
for sure
are better. They're not great. The defense is still pretty bad. I mean, Jacksonville gave it 34 to Dallas yesterday.
Well, they needed a pretty big comeback too. It's not like they were down like 24-10. So,
and the Titans moved the ball at will. Really for most of that Jaguars game,
second half explosion with 8 points against Jacksonville.
Yeah, unstoppable. But I do think the Titans could still go win that game. And whether that would influence their decision making, I tend to think like if it's up to Amy Adams-Strunk, we kind of know what she thinks of this stuff, right? She fired Malarkey after the team's first playoff win in 15 years. So she was not influenced by that.
You're talking, yeah.
But whether or not like a playoff appearance would.
I still think he was a placeholder all along. Like I always thought he was. I always thought he was a placeholder. But
there's different elements involved with this because obviously Vrabel's going to have a lot more say about what the coaching staff looks like than what Robinson, I guess, would or whatever the situation you want to say it was with the Malarkey deal, but.
So Zach says, I still don't believe in this the Jaguars are for real at all. I think it's going to end up being much like 2017. If you remember, that's the Bortles team that went to the AFC title game where they get hot, flame out, and then go back to their losing ways the next year. And to that I say, Zach, do you know the difference between Blake Bortles and Trevor Lawrence? And I know I've been the one guy who's like, Trevor Lawrence is the real deal, boys. Like, this guy is going to figure it out. Urban Meyer's that bad. Like, it's all Urban Meyer. And I don't even think Doug Peterson's that great, but I think Trevor Lawrence is that good. So we'll see. That's a huge difference. Blake Bortles, Trevor Lawrence, huge difference. So part of the shift with where this team could go in the future and really the questions I think we can ask Mike Vrabel is about this injury. And I've got a theory, a philosophy that I want to float to you and see what you think, because it's almost impossible to directly tie, like specific injuries to a style of play or a style of coaching. I mean, unless you're running Junction Boys shit in like 1954, like I don't think you can tie. There's very strict rules on concussion protocols and padded practices, and like there's a lot of rules the NFL puts in place to maintain certain things. And Vrabel said on Monday that they largely are just doing walkthroughs in practice to get guys to a certain percentage point and then get them into the games. That they're not doing a lot of hitting, they're not doing a lot of hard stuff. Nobody in the NFL really does. So I am curious why this is continuing to happen now for 2 straight years, as are all of the fans and media, and I think probably Vrabel to some extent too. And the only thing I can really come up with about why this continues to happen, and again, we're not talking about the fluke injuries in a game where Ryan Tannehill's running and scrambling and a guy rolls up his ankle. That's just a thing that happens. Derrick Henry falls on Nate Davis's ankle. That's just a thing that happens. That's football. But Is there something to the philosophy and identity of a Mike Vrabel coach team that wants to be dominated in the trenches, dominate the physicality battle? We know the type of player Mike Vrabel is, that this sort of like, it's not machismo or like, it's just the style of play. Is there any way to draw a line from the style of play the Tennessee Titans want to exhibit and be every single Sunday to the amount of injuries that they have sustained over a 2-year period on both sides of the ball? Because I don't know about you, I cannot come up with anything other than just unlucky for a team to have this many injuries on almost every possession.
Yeah.
Like every possession.
It's unbelievable at this point. It's like when a play ends and there's not a Titan down on the field, with medical attention, it's like an upset now. But it is unreal. Like the last 2 years have been unlike anything I've ever seen before. And I keep trying to like wrap my head around what is going on here. What's the problem? And I think, a lot of people are just at the point where we'll fire all the strength and conditioning coaches and all that stuff. I struggle with that because I'm like you said, some of this stuff, strength and conditioning coach isn't going to stop somebody from falling on Ryan Tannehill's ankle 3 times in a season, or stop the fact that Treylon Burks gets blasted in the face with an illegal hit and concussed and knocked out for 2 weeks. Like some of this stuff is just bad luck. It just is what it is. But it is crazy. Like at some point, you can't have this much bad luck without there being like some underlying explanation, unless you're just like there's just black cats running all over your facility or something like that. So I think it's something that they have to look into as far as strength and conditioning. I think the style of play thing is an interesting angle, but I looked up, Man Games Lost, the site that keeps up with like all of the information from different injuries as far as like total games lost, impact to the players, whatnot. And if you look at other teams that I would consider like physical football teams, and I would say like the 49ers would be one of those. I would lump probably like Baltimore into that group. Baltimore is pretty high up as far as injuries concerned. There's no one anywhere close to the Titans currently.
Pittsburgh? Would Pittsburgh be in this category?
You could say Pittsburgh. Yeah, I guess so. I would say, and the other interesting part of this argument too is like, which side do you view as more physical too, like the offense or the defense? Because most of the injuries have actually been on defense. And to me, a lot of that is, your play style is almost dictated by your opponent at that point, because, are you playing the Chiefs who want to spread you out, or are you playing somebody who wants to run it at you?
But you have more control over the style of your attitude.
True.
And again, I don't know. You were a basketball player, Mike. So you're very, very tall. But playing football, part of the reason I never was any good at defense is that it's almost all instinctual. Like it's reactionary, it's instinctual, it's muscle memory. You've trained to diagnose and react instantaneously, and then physically you've got to fly there. You got to fly to where you need to be, get to your assignment, fill a gap, cover a man, whatever it might be. Part of the reason I had to play offense is not that I didn't mind the physicality. It's that I was not quick enough to react to and have the instincts. Like I needed to know where I was going. I played wide receiver, so I needed to know exactly where I was going to have any chance at all to like break you down and get open. Like I had no chance if I played defense. Yeah. And I love the physicality. I love taking hits. I love giving hits. Like it's fun. But with defense, it's about like there's some insanity there on defense. And that is clearly where Mike Vrabel wants to be in a rock fight every single Sunday. He wants his defense to dictate tone and tempo and physicality. They draft physical players in the front seven. They draft physical safeties that like to. They draft corners that love to tackle. Elijah Molden is a very physical player, and it's not a surprise that a 5'10" guy has had multiple injuries playing for Mike Vrabel, who likes to be a physical player. So again, is it all coincidence? I don't know. Probably. Can you tie in this many injuries to a strength and conditioning staff? I think you would need to show me some really specific scientific data before I blame anybody on a strength and conditioning staff. I blame more of the style of play than anything else. But again, even that's kind of a guess at this point.
And the other thing on the strength and conditioning topic, because there are some teams that, there is a lot of teams that invest a lot of money in strength and conditioning analysis, like whether it be analytics or just like investment in studying how teams practice, how you keep players healthy. It does sound like some of the stuff that the Titans do is pretty advanced. Vrabel talked a lot about it today, and he's talked about it before. All of the stuff that they monitor from a workload standpoint at practice, and whether they monitor speed and power output and all this stuff so that they can tell when a guy may have an injury that he has not reported. I know they do that stuff. So they're doing some stuff that I would consider like pretty advanced, but I don't know what other teams do maybe above and beyond them. So that's to me like something that the new GM, whoever that may be, has to study and say, look, let's go to I know the Rams, not this season. They've had a lot of injuries this season, but for 5 seasons prior, I think they were in like the top 5 in the league in avoiding injuries for like 5 straight years. And the Vikings went and hired one of the Rams' strength and like I think it's like player performance or something that. But they hired someone off the Rams staff, and the Vikings have had very little injury issues this year. So I would go look at what are teams like that doing? Is that just coincident that this guy just happens to like have good luck or whatever? Like, what are they doing that the Titans are not that is helping them stay healthy? Because the Titans clearly have an issue. And I don't think that it's all luck, but I also don't think it's all just like, oh, well, this strength team doesn't know what they're doing. It's probably a combination of things.
So Marcus says, is there any correlation to teams that tackle well, efficiently, and injuries? I think that would be interesting to learn and study. Again, Vrabel prides himself on having really good tacklers. They drafted really good again, their secondary is full of a bunch of dudes that are really good tacklers. That's one of the things they look at in the draft. I do think, and he used the phrase repeat offenders in his press conference about guys who are kind of constantly injured. I do think that can be, they clearly said to Jeffrey Simmons and Caleb Farley and these other guys said the injuries are not a big concern. And I know we're already talking Jackson Smith and Jigba, who I think is one of the best wide receivers I've ever seen in college football. I would love to have him if I'm a Titans fan, but a lot of injuries. So it's already there on his resume. Should it be a concern? I would need to see teams that throw the ball significantly more and run true spread offenses and are just willing to play in shootouts. And defensive philosophy is not their primary, like it's number 2 on the list, where we know Vrabel's always going to be defensive philosophy number 1 over the offense. I want to know if those teams somehow, Chiefs or whatever, are staying healthier over time. And it needs to be over time. It can't be like 1 year, 2 year. It needs to be like over 10 years.
Yeah.
Teams that are running spread offenses that are wide open in space and they're slinging it around 45 times a game, that they are healthier, not winning more, but that they are healthier. And then maybe we can point to, all right, this style of play is part of this equation. But otherwise, it's like, I don't know. I land on this. It's all the margins anyway. This guy for the Vikings that you're talking about, the monitoring of the GPS stuff at practice that Vrabel talks about, it's all on the margins. Derrick Henry breaks his foot. That's not because like if a doctor can show me it's because he had 230 carries by October, then sure, let's have that conversation. But there's no correlation, at least so far that I've found. It's all on the margins. You're either lucky 1 year or you're not. If this happens a third year next year, because they had 93 last year was a record, right? 93 players, 91
or 93. Yeah.
They're at 80 already this year, so they're getting close. If they add a few more pieces over the next 3 games, they could actually get close to their own record. Like if it happens a third year in a row, then you have to start talking about what is Mike Vrabel's staff doing. But I don't know if we're there yet, I guess.
I mean, it's definitely something that I feel like they've got to study. Like, and if Amy Adams-Strunk wants to hire me to do that investigation into 10 years of adjusted games lost versus tackle rate or whatever.
Yeah, there we go.
Tackle rate. I'm down. Call me up, Amy.
So tackle rate, games lost, style of offense and defense, and then again, repeat offenders from college and free agents. Are you bringing in players that are continually dealing with these things? Again, AJ Brown, Roger Saffold happen to be healthy this year. Is that coincidence? Probably. I wouldn't bank on AJ Brown with 2 knee surgeries being healthy the rest of his career. I wouldn't bank on that.
I'll also say this regarding the AJ Brown, Roger Saffold point. is there's a little bit of selection bias because we don't say that about Corey Davis. We don't say that about Jack Conklin. I mean,
where's Adoree Jackson?
Yeah, all those guys are hurt. So, I mean, they've been hurt
right.
consistently since they left the Titans. So, I think it's, you can point to anything or any one example and kind of prove a point. But I think on the whole, that doesn't hold up as far as like guys leaving the Titans and being healthy suddenly.
I know that Vrabel and Robinson and everybody for the Titans would just brush this off, but I will say there's something to also being extraordinarily small. Like Kyle Phillips is going to be more easily hurt, and Adoree Jackson is going to be more easily hurt. Elijah Molden is going to be like, when you play really physically and you love football and you're small, like that's just automatically going to be a tough. It doesn't mean you can't be healthy and play. It's a factor. It's going to be a factor in all of this. So okay. All right. I think that's all we got for the Titans. Zach will be back on Thursday. We'll be back on Thursday to preview, of course, the big game coming up this weekend. You got Christmas coming up this weekend as well. Lots of bowl games, some SEC stuff as well. So we will talk about that. Oh, Stoney wants to ask, what did you think of Raden's before? Of course, he gets hurt. He does. I don't know about you. He didn't look like he was playing real football on most pass sets. Like, is that a weird thing to say?
Yeah.
It felt like he was kind of just like going through the motions. But a couple of times he was one-on-one and did his job, I guess. I don't know. He also got beat a couple times too. So
yeah, he actually, so PFF had him for 0 pressures allowed. And I think it was 10 pass snaps. I thought he looked actually pretty good for the most part. The holding penalty to me, wasn't a huge thing. That like the broadcast team did a good job bringing it up that was a screen that went awry, and then he was just kind of stuck.
Yeah. Effort penalty sometimes.
Yeah. So to me, I thought he played pretty well overall. I do want to watch the all 22 and see how he did like as a run blocker. But to me, like, hey, look better than Daly. Like, at least you could see when he passed that, he was actually able to get depth off the line of scrimmage and like move and like keep up with an edge rusher and push him past Tannehill versus just like flailing and as the guy went by. But
yes, his feet actually moved during the play. That
exactly.
They didn't move all that fast, but they did move during the play. I will say I agree with Zach on this. It's just time to be done with the Dennis Daly thing. Like, you guys have made enough excuses. You tried Raden's, obviously. Let's go back to that if he's healthy and see what happens. Okay.
If Raden is healthy, he has to be the guy.
Yeah, I agree. World Cup final. I just want to say, look, if you Titans fans, you Nashvillians, you college football fans that tune in. By the way, Kingston Group Pharmacy, 2 of our great sponsors. Make sure you check them out. Support local business. BuildKG.com, of course, pharmacy over there in East Nashville and McFerrin Avenue. Great place to get out of the house during the holidays. You got the in-laws. You want to go, you slip out for a couple hours. Go check out the pharmacy. Great place to grab a beer and a burger and just kind of chill out and relax with no TV screens, no phones, no social media, no in-laws, no gift giving. Just chill out and relax at the pharmacy. Great place to go do that, of course. And, of course, the Kingston Group. Don't make any big decisions about your house before you talk to them. It's buildkg.com. I guess I would just say to all the people who love this show, we love you, and we know you love it because of Titans and SEC football. Like, that's what this show's all about. But if you did not enjoy what that game gave you, a 3-3 extra time messy coronation as the greatest of all time, with arguably the two of the top 3 teams in the world competing in front of probably 4 billion people watching this. 3.5 billion watched in 2018. It's going to blow that number away from a rating standpoint. And in what amounts to a Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes 42-38 Super Bowl, I don't know what else you are not among the living. You're not a human being with a soul and a heart if you watch some of that game and you were not hooked. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, and honestly, to borrow a little bit of your analogy there, to me, this was the Bucs Chiefs Super Bowl, except if Tom Brady actually, and Mahomes actually went, like you said, 45-42 or something like that, and just went nuts and we're trading blows because it was the greatest of all time against like the next generation, like the greatest of the next generation right now in Mbappe. So like, I mean, like
you're right. Brady Mahomes is better.
Especially in the end of that, both regular time and extra time, like was insane. Like it was up and down, chances on both ends, like a crazy save by the Argentina keeper. Like it was phenomenal. Like, and I didn't grow up a soccer guy. Like, I was not a soccer guy growing up. I've adopted it, as an adult and begun to really enjoy it. Like, and I love watching it. I watch, club soccer and stuff like that. But there's something about like the representing your country and like the pride that these guys have doing it. And, for Messi getting that moment, which has, eluded him his whole career and was just kind of like the final cap on like what is basically the perfect soccer career was really special to see it done that way with him scoring and obviously with just the back and forth nature of it.
I'm just glad I don't have to argue with my friends anymore about stupid ass Ronaldo. Like I can just be done with that and be like, no, he's not as good. He's not as good. Now I know a World Cup championship depends on a million other things, and if Messi happened to be born in like Turks in Trinidad and Tobago, we wouldn't be talking about his Tobago wouldn't be talking about his World Cup championship right now. I get it. Argentina happens, but Portugal is pretty good though. But I'm glad that the argument is done. So if you're on Team Messi like I was before, now you're never going to convince me otherwise that Messi's not the greatest of all time. I did have to explain to my wife that he's 5'2". she was a little alarmed at that. George, dude, look, 9 a.m. on a Sunday we drank 2 bottles of champagne with the kids. Like we were having a blast watching a 9 a.m. Sunday game. George, you need to get in the game. I'll go further with your analogy because I think it's actually better. It's not Allen and Mahomes, two guys like in their prime. This really was Brady versus Mahomes, the greatest of all time potentially at his position. But here's what really like. Let's go further. It was Brady being up like 24-7 with like 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And then Mahomes does some crazy nonsense, scores like 2 or 3 times to tie the game at like 27. It goes into overtime, and then they both score touchdowns, and it ends up 31-31 going into double overtime. And that is what took place. And then, of course, they both end up scoring again in double overtime. So you just have to keep going with the analogy. And, of course, the worst part of this analogy is that Brady rides off into the sunset with a championship. That's the part we all hate. But otherwise, it sticks. And if you weren't interested in that, I can't help you. I'm sorry. You're not among the living.
It was incredible. Tough game for our guy, Justin Mello of Music City Audible, who is a diehard Portugal fan and Cristiano Ronaldo apologist. So tough breaker for him.
I mean, look, if he's that great, why is he on the bench? That's all I gotta say. That's all I gotta say. I mean, I know neither one of them likes to pay their taxes. That's fine, but one is way douchier. Okay, it's not even close. The douche factor is off the charts. 100%. And I'm talking about Ronaldo, not Justin. By the way, we love you, Justin. But you just can't look at one guy and you're like, I don't want to talk to you. And then you look at Messi and you're like, you want to come over, dude, and have a beer?
Yeah, he looks pretty chill. Yeah,
come over and have a beer. Okay, no, Jason, I cannot do this in cricket terms. I don't even know how they score points or runs or goals in cricket. I'm not even sure how that works. Mike, thank you so much for hanging out. Tell everybody again where they can read you, find you, and listen to you.
So F Words Pod this week will be out Wednesday. My column at paulkarsky.com will be out Wednesday morning as well. And then a Mike Herndon show, or the Mike Herndon show. I'm combining our show with this one.
Mike Herndon show.
A Mike Herndon show.
Just go listen to a Mike Herndon show. Just one of them or 2 of them, whatever. All right. Listen to all Mike's stuff. Read all Mike's stuff. Zach will be back on Thursday. Kingston Group, of course. Right there, Build KG right there. You got pharmacy right there. Support our local businesses. So sign up for an insider account at Broadway Sports Media and check out all the other great shows from 440 Sports. My name is Braden Gall for Mike Herndon. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for listening to all you guys. We really appreciate it. Rate, review, subscribe. This has been a football show.